You can see on the screen here, I have a hinge, and that is our goal for today. We're going to work on how to make a proper hinge. And the hinge is, most importantly, is this middle part here. So it has two cylinders. One is inside of this ring of cylinder, and you can see if I pull this one out a little bit, you'll be able to see you have a ring of cylinder that is on the outside of a slightly thinner cylinder. So these, obviously the ring and this cylinder here has a slight space in between so that the ring can rotate freely around this cylinder. So that's our goal for today. I'm going to move these two objects to the background here as our reference. So we're going to start by creating this orange cylinder first. So I'm going to start with a solid cylinder, and I'm going to set it to 1 centimeter, so 10 millimeter on each direction here. And I will create a second cylinder, and this cylinder it will be 5 millimeter thick. Now the reason why I use 5 millimeter is that I want the ring on the outside is slightly thinner than the ones that I have behind here. I want the ring here to be 2 millimeter in thickness. Okay, so it's a slightly thicker design. So in order to have that 2 millimeter on the outside with a 0.5 millimeter space in between the outer ring and the inner cylinder here, I need the inner cylinder to be exactly 5 millimeter thick. So I'm going to raise this to 10 and set this to the center here, and that's our second part. And our last part is another cylinder that is exactly the same as the bottom one, so 10 millimeter on each side. And I'm going to raise this to 30, set this to 0. So now all three are aligned together, so I can group these three together. So now I have the middle part done. Okay. Now I'm going to create the ring on the outside. So to do that, I will have a second cylinder system. And so for this cylinder, I'm going to set it to red, so to distinguish between these two different systems. The thickness of this cylinder has to be exactly the same as the bottom and the top part here in order to have it work properly. The height, now the middle part has 20 millimeter, but I need this ring to be able to freely move around this. So I'm going to give it a slight space in there. This space needs to be quite small for the hinge to work properly. So I'm going to only give each of the space to be a 0.5 millimeter space. And so I'm going to set the height at 19 millimeter and raise this to a height of 10.5 millimeter. So in this case, once I superimpose these two things, this bottom will have a 0.5 millimeter space from the bottom cylinder, and then also have a 0.5 millimeter space from the top part of this hinge. Oh, actually, before I raise this up, I should finish making the ring first. So I'm gonna actually cut the ring in the middle. So the ring in the middle, I said the ring will have a 2 millimeter thickness. So the center hole needs to be 6 millimeter wide, and I'm going to put this in the middle and group these two together. So now we have our ring, and now I can raise this ring to a height of 10.5 millimeter and move this over to the origin, and there. So I have superimposed this ring onto these two-cylinder system, and so now once this is printed, this red cylinder ring will be able to freely move, will rotate basically around this cylinder to create a hinge. And so to add a panel onto it, then we can create a really thin, board here. Do that quickly. Let's actually do 2 millimeter thick. And so to move over, you will need to actually joint this one together with that. So we need a little joint in between, and this joint is going to have a thickness of 2 millimeter, and it won't need to be too wide, and so it will be 3 millimeter is enough, and a height of 19 millimeter to match up with the outer ring here. And so to do that, I will go here and raise it up to 10.5 centimeter, 10.5 millimeter. Now you can see that I have actually moved this 9 millimeter from the origin here, which means that about 1 millimeter of this is actually superimposed into this outer cylinder ring. And so this is how we're going to attach this. And so to leave a 1 millimeter space in between the board and the hinge, I'm going to move this to 11 millimeter. So now you have this board, this middle part, and this ring here. And so these three shapes, we can group them together. And so that forms one side of the board. Okay? And for the other side of the board, I'm going to create another board, but this time I'm going to use orange. Again, it's going to be 2 millimeter thick and 40 millimeter tall. And so I'm going to place this on this side of the cylinder, also having 1 millimeter space in between, right? But I need to also joint this board with the top and the bottom cylinder. So I need two little jointers, one here and one here. So same thing, we're going to create two that is 2 millimeter in thickness, and it's going to be 3 millimeter wide and 10 millimeter high. So same thing, I'm going to move this in here. Okay, so it's at -2 so that it's 1 millimeter goes into this cylinder and 1 millimeter goes into that board here. And I'm going to copy this. You can use the copy, and then we're going to paste another that is exactly, oops, made the wrong object. Okay, so okay, there we go. So that piece. Now this piece, I have to raise it up 30. Oops, that's the wrong one. I have to raise it up by 30 millimeter and move it so that it is over on the top here. So now we can join this center cylinder, these two pieces of connector, plus this board together. So 4 shapes. we're going to group them, and so to create the other side of the hinge. So if I pull one side of the hinge over, you'll be able to see how this is constructed. Okay, so once these two are put together, and you will see a proper hinge that's created. Okay, so that's how